when I began to consult tarot and to offer readings, I remember tapping into the 5D and beyond spectrum of things. And see, tapping into doesn't mean anything particular except for the relationship that we have with life and energy. So 5D are usually inclined to be equanimous, compassionate, and inclined because there are those who do come out of that 3D, 4D. So these dimensions, which are expressions of consciousness. The people who are grounded in humanness understand that a third dimension is a person who's in duality, as is a fourth dimension. And those whole topics on the different bandwidth, I actually engage with them often. What I can tell you is I equate 3D to, someone who's basically wanting to live medieval times, past times, not accepting that we're in 2023, that one day, the sun will go out, the stars go out. Like, there's a whole bunch of subject matters that exist that explain to us how the world works. Very simplified. I mean, they explain it to children, except for the ones who get taken out of school or whatever and are not actually given the opportunity to learn about, hey, here's the basics of life. And there isn't necessarily any meaning. So the part about belief system being personal in 2023, I believe, at least in certain parts of the world, it's been made quite clear that it's, belief. It's not a must to stay, again, within a type of idea that really, again, stems from the past. 4D, because of being intuitives and people who are mystics, and so they are in a specific realm of awareness with this ethereal plane, I think is the word that is used. I don't remember words very well, but I know I have also access to it when I began my own dream state, astral travel, again, tarot reading, Akashic record readings, all of these aspects, crystals. I have a very close relationship with energy, is what I like to call it, because that's really what it is. We're a vibration. So I pick up on that vibration. And no matter the stories, it's always been very much in the place of, I'm a filter, means me, Maria, the person, is here, which means my past is part of it. So I might want to remember that. And also inform those who are coming to me, hey, FYI, I got a personality, I got some ways that I conceptualize life, and it isn't in duality. It is not in the good and bad, evil, not evil. No, actually, I don't believe in it at all, evil, or the good, bad thing. This is where it's a concept that must be discussed in depth. When we're, if I'm helping a person to pursue inner growth, I'll explain to them something. It's not good or bad that you may choose to want to stay in your adaptive child, rigid mind, but we don't know as of today how that will affect. Will you impair yourself permanently? No, we don't know this. And now what I'm thinking about is a 4D plane that explains about ego, death, dark night of the soul. And I saw this one video. It gave you a very great explanation. I still don't know, physically speaking, what they're talking about, though. So I'm waiting to learn more from the mind experts on actually aspects of the neuroreceptors firing into communication versus a story that makes it seem like you can stay stuck. So what I do know, if I want to keep it again basic, is that if I, let's say, am using my legs and my muscles too much and my ligaments break, right? Like, that's the way I think of it. So if I simplify the brain, I'm assuming the more you just stay in rigidity and move to chaos. And so this is where you don't move to a differentiated self. You don't move to an integrated mind. You don't move to using your social engagement system. You don't move to using all of that which is a part of you as a person. Can do the breathing, the yoga, all you want. If you're not interacting with people and noticing, if you get into your adaptive child self, which would be rigid, harsh, unforgiving, the cognitive dissonance that people do, or confirmation bias, and just the way that you will feel interactions, you can feel how they're going. Either they bring you lightness and joy and you're having fun, or there's going to be some rigidity. Our bodies, our nervous systems communicate. So back to the tarot stuff, I introduced that because what I was watching the other day is something that I, as a 5D person, will be like, okay, that 4D reader definitely is filling the information bank of their community who believes in this word karma as it coming back to get you. So not only is it being misused, I still probably misuse it myself, but I try my best to remember how Sadhguru poses what karma is. It's just, if every day I wake up and I have to drink coffee, I'm creating karma with coffee. And then there's also other people who are in their near enlightenment soul age group or any of these, they're teachers of ascension and consciousness, and they too will say karma is not good or bad, it's something that is. Now the other part about good and bad, what I want to say is we have to use words to explain concepts. So when I say it's not good or bad, some people say, but no, it is bad. So like the rigid mind, it is bad physically speaking, of course, physically speaking, but if a person is choosing to consistently stay in a cycle because they disregard the fact that to work out of it requires their own neuroplasticity, their own actual choice of how they use their imagination, how they use their contemplation, and they want to stay in an inner critic and an outer critic. And what I mean is, again, they're going to say, but the world outside is not giving me what I want. Or, hey, guess what? I'm just going to isolate because that way I don't have to be around all these people that I don't like. And they want to continue to think that that's okay, which is what I see a lot of different types of 3D, 4D people do, by the way. They don't actually allow themselves to say, wait, this is actually kind of not a good life. And I'm not presenting an adult version. I'm presenting a version of myself that's getting rigid and or upset. So, like I said, when I say not good or bad personally, it's because you get to choose if you want to get out of that human suffering or you want to stick to it. And people who are in 3D, 4D, and or people who are pessimists or negative or whatever other words we want to choose, basically they don't even bother thinking they can move into another space. It's really a conscious choice. So when someone's using back to the karma, because this is how I usually do this and that and connect various thoughts. That's why it's for the 5DC, potentially Enlightenment Soul Age Group community. It's for my lovely individuals who are tapped into your infinite higher human potential, right, left. So you can follow me without needing a cog in a machine. The ones who want the cog in the machine, they want a structure, they're going to left brainers. Because I don't do that. I do first little spiral, then I bring you back around and I try to support the expansion of you. And in fact, it's food for thought for a reason. So we're not doing cogs, we're doing food for thought. So this lady who's talking about some poor group of people who are going through pretty much a hellhole right now is using the word karma to indicate that they're getting their karma because of mistreating other people. So there's this whole idea in the 4D community that a group of people are the quote-unquote good guys and gals and the other group of people are the bad guys and gals, and apparently all of the good guys and gals are getting good karma and all the bad guys and gals are getting bad karma. And as this person's explaining this, I'm thinking, and you want to call yourself a spiritual human being. Now, I'd say that anytime I personally consider spirituality, and when I listen to the gurus and the actual spiritual people, their only message is very straightforward. It's called love. It doesn't have conditions. No, people have conditions, and that's okay. People can have their conditions. If you're going to talk about intuitiveness, if you're going to talk about connectedness, if you're going to keep and this is what I love about the 5D plane, is that we're so far into the expansion of consciousness that we don't have only monotheistic religions anymore. We also have our lovely mystics and intuitives and channelers and guides, and they are serving a group of people who are still in duality. So while the ones who watch this later are like, finally a justice shall be served, or whatever it is that's going through their mind, 5D person will be very sad immediately. I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope that the people who if this is happening to these people, I hope they have a somatic and trauma expert nearby, or somebody who's informed that can say, hey, it'll be okay, let's go together, or at least they have a group of unconditionally loving friends that are like, it'll be okay, I hope immediately. I was like, I hope these people have someone, because apparently they lose their job, they're not getting some job, apparently their mental health is not well, and this lady is again talking about karma, once it's done, and I'm like, dude, this is just so, who's listening to you? Who's actually listening to you and thinking of rejoicing? But then in my mind, I was like, yeah, there are people. The saddest part is that realizing that there are people that I know in 4D land that would be like, yeah. And I'm like, So 5D land is about love. Because oneness consciousness is we're all people. We all make mistakes. We all do a lot of things. And we all are born as infants. And this whole idea of maturing your emotions is something people don't do. They actually ignore their emotions and leave them in their 2-year-old and teenage form. Otherwise, they'd all be in their enlightenment soul age group. And they'd be 5DC light workers, and they'd really be looking out with a smile on their face because they wouldn't be in their temporal junction in human suffering. They would have rewired their brain to be an integrated brain, which is very straightforward and easy when you choose love versus fear or some excuse of why, somebody's getting karma back, again, using the word erroneously. Furthermore, continuing to divide good and bad. And I used to love action movies, but for the good people winning, if you will. And eventually I'm like, this is not really the right way, because the quote unquote bad people, they got shit that's happened to them. So that's kind of like not really great. Some people think there can't be, some harmony related to how things play out. I believe otherwise. I believe we can have harmony if we have educated and compassionate individuals who are able to understand that when people are in their biological rudeness, they are not doing this by choice. That we are all inclined, our bodies and mind want to move into their original state. So the restored embodied self and the integrated mind. A mind that is healthy, so a mind that is flexible, a mind that is adaptive. Now, some may have a structural situation when it comes to the mind and how it fires. That's what I was saying at the beginning. I don't know how many more years before the neuroscience and psychoeducators, the good ones, figure out some stuff, but they're publishing. Like one of the recent episodes that I did, or tomorrow it is, talks about loneliness, and there's a couple of studies that show how that changes the brain. And so, there's, again, I'm not a mind expert, but the ones who are, I'm noticing they have a way they explain how things work. So rigidity is not good to be in. And what I equate it to, it's like a car that's in overdrive, but not in that way. It's you using your mind in a way that's going to keep it like something that becomes chronic, essentially. However, I'm a big believer in that infinite higher human potential and you being able to consciously choose to work with yourself. And neuroplasticity shows that we can rewire. But the effort is what people usually don't put in because they think mindset doesn't have anything to do with how they're feeling. Instead, the way you contemplate is everything. So if you're doing inner critic, outer critic, of course, your mind's just going to give you a headache. If you're contemplating, which is where the neutrality and the duality for the advanced place in the inner growth program comes in, and so you equate, here's my karma, so good and bad, likes, not likes, and that's why the 5DC in the Enlightenment Soul Age group does dharma, because we actually say, okay, yeah, of course I don't like this feels not really great. And I wanted this and I didn't get this, and it's like, well, but at the end of the day, I got my breath, I got my 24 hours. We don't actually have an entity of any sort. They're like, let me find the reason why I'm going to allow myself to sit in equanimity, to sit in the fact that I can accept that which I do not like and I can accept that which I do like, and I can know as a person. I was a kid when I was like, you're not the only human around. Yeah, I know that. I'm not the only ego around. Are you? None of us are. So it kind of seems very straightforward, at the very least for secure attachment people, to be able to do something like that. But I also remember a teenager, and when I was a teenager, and the people in their way of, but I do all of this for everyone and nobody ever does anything for me. And I think I said that to myself once. I'm like, this is bullshit. Yeah, no, that feels wrong. It is wrong. It's not true. We all do everything for each other and then we don't. And I would say that that's really just the beauty of family dynamics and human dynamics. So the beauty is in our differences. The 5D person will see that. We go beyond the whole belief system because they're stories. And even when we experience them, I have plenty of dreams I could share, which I won't do right now. That's in the Lightworker's Life or the Oversoul, the paid subscription-based model contents for I want to support those who want to move into 5D, not the ones who want to stay in 4D. And if there's one thing I noticed of any individual who is not yet their complete restored embodied self and integrated mind, or at the very least inclined to move into the spectrum, is the way that they will take a story and put it in a puzzle and fit it in that little box that they want it to fit, and then they will ride with it. And here's where 4D, 3D keep people separated. They don't put people in a place of compassion. The lady who's talking about some group of people getting their karma back was not leading with compassion. They were leading with what is not necessarily revenge, but this kind of like, ha 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 ha, justice is served. And I'm thinking, even if you have a hint of that. So here is where a 5D person, of course, there are moments in my life where I'm like, oh, wow, okay. And I was young, and I'll never forget, because anytime these moments happen, like, that's wrong. That's not right. That's mean. So people like to use the word mean. How about when you acknowledge it upon yourself and say, yeah, that's not a nice thing to say. And all you need to think is of like the Ugly Duckling song. If you can't say something nice, say nothing. But the feeling part is also clear to us. So whenever, sometimes I will have been mistreated, if you will. And so there's a pinch, a pinch, that's the word. And that, I think it happened like last year. There's a pinch of that. A pinch of a feeling that was like, this is wrong. Why is this happening? So in that, I'm upset that I've been quote unquote mistreated. Immediately it's like, you didn't get, nothing happened to you. So when you are master of your emotions and your mental plane, and you're an actual grown-up, and nobody basically physically hurt us, we will be able to say it's not a big deal, it's not a good or bad thing, it's a choice of a person. And usually, here's the other part, you will know that there is a reason. It's called biological rudeness. This is not a justification, by the way. This is knowledge of a person. In this case, I have gained enough information with somatics and trauma-informed educational courses, plus my previous knowledge with sociology, psychology, existentialism, and I'm a human as well, to say, okay, guess what? And intuitive, by the way, I can tell if I'm upset about something, and I can be grown up enough to know that there's no reason to get pissy about it, just because there is none. If I'm in a physical threat, then I have the ability, hopefully, to protect myself. This is where 5D only uses self-preservation mode, or actual mammalian self-preservation mode, in real situations. The emotions are easy to tend to because they are easy to understand, because they're part of something. The difference is people that are in 3D, 4D, and are not integrated minds, and are not restored embodied selves, they have an adaptive child, a protective lens. That lens has a story. It ain't some siphoning of energy. It's an actual story of, but you did this, and this is shame, blame, fault, revenge. And these are loops that keep people in their trauma, in their neural-wired brain, in the same exact pattern. So that rigidity with the chaos is a pattern. If only they looked at their own self, they would realize their own safety behavior pattern. Too busy either criticizing external or criticizing internal, and or doing a little bit of both, and in none of these cases do expand. And so when I'm seeing, again, a 3D, 3D I feel bad for, because their entire structure's changed, and they have lost their identity, and they get to rebuild a new one if they want. Maybe, maybe not. They might just live with a group of people that want the past to return, which won't return, and hey, they'll find solace. And this makes me happy if they find a group of people that they can relate to, because again, it's not great to be alone in a world that you cannot relate to. 4D people, because they're intuitives, I have a little bit more to share on that, because I want to share the 5D mystic and or the actual spirituality growth, and they're not doing that. They too live in a story and a bandwidth, which isn't a bandwidth. It's people who are focusing on specific things that I've learned enough about and experienced, and I get it, but what they're ignoring is their human part. They're ignoring their actual inner child that wanted to be seen and soothed and safe, and so there's a couple of things that they're ignoring about their emotional responses, and really it's reactivity, those charged states, but yet they want to talk about being intuitives, and they want to talk about their higher self, and they want to be talking about their being anointed and all these other things, and they're not professing love from their mouth for all. Well, we have one, thank goodness for Sadhguru. I mean, I have to say, if there's one person I'm enjoying to see out there because he shares the true spirituality, is Sadhguru. Other than that, I love my mystics, but when they're talking about karma the way I saw this lady, I'm like, yeah, there has to be voices of, hey, okay, look, Your interpretation, it's your interpretation. You know, they have that connection to the ethereal plane. They got a group of people that are following that. Here's those karma wheels, by the way. So this is why there is not a good or bad thing in a reading like that. They did nothing except for tell a story. In fact, all tarot will say it's entertainment, because this is where it's not something that you're supposed to take, like, which, FYI, if a person is the owner of their life, they would know this. I have seen people, though, that don't. I love seeing responsible tarot readers, and so the entertainment part, and I'm only here to guide, yada, yada, yada. There are plenty of beautiful ones. When they're the ones who are basically satisfying a teenager's revenge, spiteful, whatever it is, suppressed emotional responses, which is basically wanting to say, everybody go to, you know, and I don't trust anyone. It's all teenage behavior. Grown-ups are even worse, because the teenager has reasons. The grown-ups just have a repetitive story that they've been telling themselves and that they cannot see beyond. And I don't even know, like, personally, I don't understand, because intellectually speaking, when you talk to most people, they usually can follow a pretty good path, you know, and then you see them year after year after year do the same stuff. You're like, I don't, like, my brain, I'm still trying to wrap myself around it, because I'm not a genius, you know, so I'm like, I don't get it. The trauma experts help me get it. It's called rumination, and it's called a person who's just wiring their own suffering, and they're not moving into restoring body self, and in fact they're suppressing emotions, and in fact they make up excuses when they get spiteful, mean, or whatever. And it's not really mean to the 5D person. This is why we hope that people who are going through anything terminalist can get help, because that's what it means to be a human being, to hope that people can be helped out of their human suffering, not the other way around. And so on this note, it's a beautiful day. I hope you can share functional adulthood, wisdom, love, compassion, conversations. Do not silence each other. Let's talk about it. Have a great day.